Imagine doing any occupation and doing like, you get this high level job and then you just let go and you're like, I need to find another job. It's like anyone can relate to that, you know?
Totally. And it's interesting how the Pint Bike article that just got released about the rider's opinion of the new move to Discovery ESO and the kind of the anxiety that some riders have. And I think they made a good point in the Pint Bike article that the riders who are feeling uneasy about the situation are the ones that will be on the edge of actually even having a ride, of course. And because all like these changes, like there being a semi-final, the final only having 30 people in the top, that's worrying for someone that's struggling to make the top 60, of course. So it's natural that there's always going to be like a pessimistic sort of emotional response to that for the people involved in it, because it means so much to them. And
for sure, it's like, is the semi-final going to be seen the same way as the final was? Like if you made it into the live show in the final, like big win, you know? But like if you make it into the live show at the semi-final, is it going to feel the same? You know, are you going to, you know, is that going to feel like, what's the views going to be like? Is that going to give you the same exposure? But
it's more for us. Like I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm quite excited because I like change, I like novelty, I like all these things. But the story points that come from having more points of the journey. So like you've got your qualification and then you've got your semi-final. Now say, just as a random example, Ronan Dunn, fastest time in semis. Like he's looking absolutely tapped. And then in finals, he, I don't know, snaps his chain at the start or something like that. It's that like, oh, he was like, his time in semis was faster than the time that won finals or something like that. So there's more like, oh, what could have been, you know? So that in terms of storytelling and everything like that, and the more coverage and the more footage that's going to be of the run is something that excites me as a filmmaker and a storyteller. Missing any part of and I think Red Bull did a fantastic job, and hats off to everything that they've done. But that moment in 2020 when Reece won Worlds and there was no footage of his race run, that's kind of unacceptable when it comes to like elite level sport. Like that's so unhelpful for everyone. Like that does not help the situation at all. That was like a waste of an opportunity to tell that story and to elevate that moment, and therefore elevate the sport potentially. So
what was, just to give people context, what was the reason why there was no coverage of Reece's race run?
Yeah, well, they like Red Bull have to deal with X amount of riders qualifying. They can only film so many. So Reece qualified way down. He had a terrible qualification run.
So he just passed the quali. So he was like, you know, within the top 60, but not near the sharp end.
Exactly. So when you switch on the live stream, you start, you know, at X rider, you don't see everyone before, but then you might see them on the hot seat.
Yeah, so that's true. And then they maybe play a highlight or something of like the previous, but then they start at top 30, don't they, in terms of the live feed itself. You start at top 30 and then you run through, but then all the other 30 have already done the run. Yeah. And then there's
you get some footage, but not all of it. And Reece just happened to, you know, be in the unlucky, I think there was I'm not saying that this is fact, but some of the riders even get like just kind of randomly dropped because there isn't enough space.
They're not going to be able to broadcast that footage in the show. So it's like, in terms of like data management, simply data management. I know it sounds really ruthless, but it's like, if you're filming every single detail of every single rider, like that's the ideal scenario for like, you know, if a mad thing happens like Reece winning Worlds when he was not put down for that.
Yeah. It's like kind of no one's fault, but in terms of an outcome, like that's definitely something that I know for a fact that Discovery ESO are looking at, and they're going to try and make it so that every single part of the track is documented. And I think that's super exciting and super important for the sport. But that means, as a result, that you have to make the field smaller because there isn't enough time to show everyone's run from top to bottom. So then this is why you're seeing that compression of the top end of the field from that perspective of we need to do better at documenting the top performers, and that as a result, through no malice, means that those that are maybe just scraping the top 60 are not going to get the same amount of limelight.
Yeah, but I believe that but I think they're working. They're obviously aware of that issue, and they're working to allow the opportunity for people to get that limelight, because the way the semi-final works is they're going to have, well, I mean, it's kind of speculation because I don't know every intricate detail. Just from what I've read up and heard is like the semi-final race on the race day morning. There's the top 60 riders who've qualified. They'll run the semi-finals race. All 60 riders will get a live feed spot. Then that might be a compressed version. You might not get every shot on the hill.
Yeah, but you might get like, oh, this guy had this moment.
Yeah, but then like in the finals later in the day, then you go back to that, more Red Bull style top 30 riders get the finals show. And so in a way, I feel like those top 60 riders might get more coverage, because like we said, when Red Bull switched to the top 30 riders, you don't see the previous 30. You never saw them. You maybe saw one or two clips, but whereas if they've got a whole morning to show the top 60 riders in their entirety, I don't know how they're going to program that with like the timing and stuff, but okay, maybe you only see half of the shots down the hill, but still, you're still getting more time for your unexpected riders, or your riders who are like building up to get breaking that top 20, top 30. Like they're still going to get their semi-finals moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the top 30 finalists will get a full show of finals, all the details, etc. The question comes at like how, I know they're trying to balance out the points at the moment with like having semis be quite high value in points. So how is the audience and sport going to perceive semi-final? How important are people going to make it feel? Like, are they going to want to watch the semi-final because it's going to be like a lot of action in there? And I think that's what they're doing with the high point system, like to make people want to watch the semis, because then like, man, he had a bad run in semis, but he can pull it back in the finals. But then, it's basically like a 2-run race instead of a 1-run race. So there's also, does that take away from like the spectacle and the drama of one chance, palms are sweaty,
yeah, arm spaghetti,
mum spaghetti, or is it like over two races, so it's interesting. I think it's interesting.
They did the kind of breakdown of screen time for other sports, and one thing that is ESO's responsibility is to help fix the fact that the amount of screen time that each of these athletes is on screen is insanely small in comparison to other sports. For example, golf. You imagine how long a golf athlete is over a live stream is on screen.
No helmet.
Personality shown, t-shirts, sponsors, clubs, all those things are on screen.
Tennis match.
I think it worked out in mountain biking. So it was like half an hour. It was like 26 minutes over a year.
Wow.
Now, I'm sorry, that's not a good sell. That's not a good sell to anyone. Like, imagine your Volvo. You want your Volvo logo on for as long as possible on the screen. 26 minutes over a year period is not a reason to invest all your capital into. Mm-hmm. So that is what they're working hard to do, and that is the reason for the semi-final. It's all of their efforts are pointed towards elevating the sport to a new level, at new heights, and bringing it to new audiences.
Yeah,
which is exciting. What's going to happen. But there's this underlying belief from the wider community that somehow it's going to be worse because it won't be the same. And I think that's very short-sighted. I
think people are just scared of change. It's like, you're thinking about quitting your job, but I don't know if it's going to work. Scared of change. It's just, what's comfortable, and it's a very human reaction, I think, to the audience. It's like, this change. It's like, will it be as good? Of course it's going to be as good. Like, these guys are experts. They've ran the enduro series for several years, made an incredibly successful series out of that, built that into a world-class sport from nothing over a period of 5 years. Like, now they've got the whole roster of world-class sports. Now they're going to take that, and they've got amazing partners. They're going to take that to the whole world and have it sat up there with the Tour de France. I think it's really going to elevate downhill mountain biking. I think it's going to turn it from this niche sport into this mainstream, like almost like downhill ski racing. Like, I was watching the Ski Sunday, and if anyone's in the UK and is interested in skiing, like they'll know Ski Sunday. It's like a recap show of the races that have happened on Sunday on the BBC. Everybody that I know who's interested in outdoors and sports watches Ski Sunday. They've got the iconic theme tune, and you know, that's skiing. And they've got ski racing, downhill racing, cross-country racing, snowboard, freestyle, everything on that show. And it's like, I could easily imagine like a mountain bike recap show where you're learning about all the disciplines, these character stories, the little spotlights. Is like, the possibilities are endless. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I'm trying to think, like Red Bull. I mean, you've got to give them credit. They took this relatively new sport and did an amazing show, and you know, free for all the audience and stuff like that. So it's like, you've got to give them credit for that. But like, where it's going is there's gonna be more money in the sport. Athletes are gonna get paid better. You know, more opportunities for us to tell these stories. You know, and it's going to turn it into a bigger sport and be better for everybody. I think that's the vision they've got, and that's what people are worried about. But it's like, you know, once it starts happening, then I think it's going to ease the tensions.
Totally. And, you know, the lack of communication was definitely not helping as well, because they're so busy setting everything up. Like,
they've got so much on their plate.
Yeah, and a lot is still, it's fluid as well. Like, there's still ongoing discussions to do with points. There's ongoing discussions to do with protected rider status. Like, that stuff is still up in the air at the moment, and people don't understand how difficult it is to try and make the best decision for that. Like, you have to feel for whoever is trying to make that decision, and, you know, trying to portray the sport in its best light, still give the people a pathway into the sport for your next emerging talents. Something that I'd hope to see in the live show or something is showing a rider that it's surprising that they made it in. So like, highlighting the fact that this person's made it into the final for the first time. You know, I'd love to see that, as, you know, this is kind of what our company's about. It's about sort of bringing light to otherwise unseen stories and characters. And yeah, I'd love to see that, like a little highlight of like your random guy from Italy who works in a restaurant wearing the jeans. Like, if he makes the final, let's make a big deal out of that. Like, that's amazing. Let's get an interview with him and ask him about how stoked he is to even be in the top 30 for the final, and how big a deal that is for him. I'd love to see that.
One question I've got: how do you think? This is a really interesting question. How do you think like it will change people's goals? Like, I'm thinking specifically about like Ben Cathro, for example. Like, how do you think the running into the final, semi-final, like for a rider, like, are they, I guess it's still trying to get to the final, but if you can get, I don't know, that's kind of a weird question. But
well, we should ask him on next episode of Sleeper Podcast.
There we go. Yeah, that's what we'll I don't know. I thought I had a profound thought, but I was like, it's going to be interesting to see how like your Ben Cathro's approach. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how every rider approaches. If they've got 2 race runs in one day, then that's like, how do you charge that for that? How
it
do you
definitely
prepare for that?
Encourages more consistency and more like less kamikaze one run sort of behavior, which I think is quite interesting. You know, at Scottish downhill races, you do 2 race runs. And so
what's the mindset with that then? With like when you're doing a Scottish downhill, like,
I don't know. I think it's different from like local level to high class. Like, you know,
no, but come on, you were kind of like a big hot shot,
huge player at the STAs.
You're kind of a hot shot. I heard you got to expert.
Oh man, I got to expert, went back and sandbag senior. No, but at that level, like for me at least, like you do your first run, and I'm like amping because I'm like, I need to do that again. Like, I didn't get that perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to go again, because that's the first time that you practice. And I suppose they do have qualifying as well. But like, that semi will be the first time that they try and put down their hottest time. and every rider will find imperfections in their run. And so to have the opportunity to go again, I think is quite exciting. But some of the riders are seeing it as they're just making us do it twice. And it's twice as much work,
twice as much risk.
At
race speed, like you're putting it on the line.
But I think what ESO and Discovery are suggesting, or more just ESO side, that's kind of their responsibility, is that the evidence does not suggest that that's the case. So they're analyzing data and trying to come to the best decision. And from their perspective, there's nothing to indicate that doing 2 runs in a day is any more dangerous than doing 1, which is very interesting. And it's something that I'd like somebody from ESO to come on the podcast and confirm and talk us through, because we're just kind of speculating off of whispers that we hear, and we're not that involved in any of these conversations. We know very little, but a couple of things we've heard about.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know what we're like to say.
Yeah,
like, because you hear rumors and you're like, it might be true and that might be NDA'd. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like us saying about the live feed. Like, nobody knows what it looks like until we see it. We've not seen the content plan for it.
It's just this rumor mill grapevine.
Yeah, which is part of the reason why people are so nervous about it, because it's just.
Can we also touch on? I mean, I know it's a bit of a loaded topic, but like, can we also touch on like, what does it? How does it make people feel when it was free and now it costs money?
I guess because it's kind of unannounced. People, like, there hasn't been like a press release to say it's going to be available here. But I think people are going to be very surprised at where it's available. But my argument has always been that I don't know why people are so upset to pay. Like, if you enjoy watching the sport, like I bought the Supercross pass. So that was like $119 for the whole season, and you get access to all the live feeds and everything like that. Like that, that seems completely worth it to me. I get so much out of that in terms of entertainment value, and to be able to see it live and to just generally support the sport and that service that they're providing. Like, I see absolutely no issue in that. But then I'm on this side of, we're a production company. So, it's almost that understanding of how much effort and time goes into creating content in the first place. Whereas other people just see the content and there's so much of it available for free. They say, why do I need to pay for that? I say, well, because there's like thousands of people behind this production that have gotten it to this stage, and all of those people need to live. So I don't know. Yeah,
I think it's a tricky one, because it's like, the people who are, on low income and with all the current climate, it's like, £6 for a monthly subscription can mean a lot to people. And it's like, for them, they're like, I love watching the sport, but now it's super tricky. And then if they don't see that money going directly to the athletes that they love, then they're like, well, I'm not paying this to the athletes. And so there's a divide there. And it's like, I think it all just needs to get explained, and it just needs to have a bit more transparency. So it's that age old thing of like, you start overthinking when you don't hear anything. You start coming up with theories. But as you say, like it's a whole industry, and everybody that's working in it's working super hard, and they all care about downhill. So it's like, maybe, like the fact that a large network like Warner Brothers Discovery have seen downhill having that potential, I think is amazing. Like, we've obviously done a good enough job so far with the coverage we've done and everything that people have put into the sport, that is now seen as like a serious enough sport to be like taken to this new height, which I think is it's great for downhill.
Do you think it has that like potential to be that new spectacle that everyone gets into?
I think so. We always joke. Well, we always say it's like it's the downhill. It's the Formula One of mountain biking. Downhill is the Formula One of mountain biking because it's that spectacle. It's the fastest ride down the hill as fast as humanly possible. If it's green, he's ahead. If it's red, he's down. It's anyone can watch that and understand that. It's whereas the nuance of like wheel to wheel racing and cross country, it's like you need like I remember watching a few cross country races like over the past few years, and I don't have very much to do with that sport, and I found it like I was starting to pick it up, but it takes a while to like get into the details of like who's ahead, because they're all racing next to each other on the same track. So you like some people might be like getting lapped, and it's hard to see, you know. Well, I don't know. I don't want to talk down on. I'm just saying what I was trying to say is simply that downhill is quite easy to understand, and it's a spectacle.
And it's currently being viewed less than cross country, and that people, from our perspective, we don't understand why that is.
Yeah, I think it's like a niche extreme sport currently that is, you know, cross country is in the Olympics, downhill isn't in the Olympics. Because there's that endurance, fitness, athlete element. But then, you know, with downhill, to be the fastest in the world, you have to be like an athlete, a serious athlete.
I think that's another point that just isn't well enough explained. And we see this all the time, and it frustrates the life out of us to not see some sort of program that people are being translated exactly how hard this is, and, you know, being put into perspective. It's even like the steepness of the track, like it never gets translated to picture. Like you can never do it unless you're stood there and you're trying to walk down this hill and you can't walk down it, and then they're going down this insane boulder rock garden after a 4.5 minute continuous squat and press up for the whole time. And unless you kind of are there in person, you don't realize how ludicrous this is. And you know, it's that the terrain is the terrain like the
huge helmets.
Like in motocross, oh god, motocross is so gnarly, but there's no rocks, there's hardly any rocks, there's no trees for you to, so once you get there in person and see that, you're just like, what? But I'd love to be able to explain to people how hard physically it is. And, you know, in the current format, there just isn't enough time to explain that, and there hasn't historically been the budget there to create a series in which you could go in depth about each and every one of these little nuanced details and translate that to a wider, more mainstream audience, so that they understand how gnarly it is, and how fit the people need to be, and the mental strength that you require, and the differences of the characters between the riders, and, you know, why the French are so dominant and everything like that.